A tool so simple every farmer refused to work without it. Yet most people today have never seen one. What you're looking at fits in your palm, but it solved a problem that plagued agriculture for centuries. Heavy, cast iron, mostly, with a wooden handle worn smooth from 100 years of gripping. It's got a sharp edge on one end, and on the other, a flat striking surface. Simple, brutal even. But here's what's strange. Most of America has completely forgotten what this does. Walk into any hardware store today, and you won't find one. Your grandfather probably had three. Your great-grandfather had one in his pocket when he walked the fields at sunrise. So what is it? Well, let me tell you the story that tool tells. This is a hoof pick and farrier's hammer combined into one impossibly clever piece of blacksmith work. Farmers carried it every single day because they had horses, and horses had problems. A stone lodged in a hoof could lame an animal for weeks. Infection could kill it. So a farmer would take his horse to the barn, pick up this tool, and spend 5 minutes working out whatever debris was trapped between the frog and the sole of the hoof. The sharp end went in gently, scraping out mud and grime. If the horse threw a shoe and the farmer needed to reset it temporarily, the hammer and let him tap the nail back in place. One tool, multiple jobs. That was the whole philosophy of farm life. But here's the thing that most people miss. The horses didn't wear shoes because farmers were fancy. They wore shoes because a 500-pound animal working dawn to dusk needs protection. And the tool that kept those horses alive was as common as a pocket knife. Every farmer, every livery worker, every traveling horseman had one. They cost almost nothing. They lasted forever. And when the internal combustion engine came along and the horse population collapsed between 1920 and 1950, the hoof pick vanished from American life almost completely. Let me introduce you to something else that most people have never heard of, the hay knife. Picture this. It's 1895. A farmer has stacked hay for winter. It's compressed down into a tight, almost solid block in his barn loft. He needs to feed his animals, but the hay is so dense it's nearly impossible to pull apart by hand. He takes out his hay knife, which looks almost like a long sword, except the blade is only about an inch thick and maybe 30 inches long. The handle is wooden, attached at one end. He works it down into the compressed hay like a saw, using a sawing motion, and within minutes he's got loose hay that he can throw down to the animals below. It was so efficient that hay knives were standard equipment. Then came the mechanized hay baler. Then came bags and pellets. The hay knife became useless overnight. Today, only collectors and historians know it existed at all. There's a tool called a tine straightener that you almost never see anymore. And when you do find one at an antique sale, most people have no idea what they're looking at. Farm forks, hay forks, and manure forks took a beating. The tines would bend. They'd twist. They'd become bent sideways from hitting rocks or frozen ground. A farmer couldn't just throw away a good fork. So someone invented the tine straightener, a specialized tool with slots and curves built into cast iron that would grip a bent tine and let you carefully bend it back to straight. It required knowledge. It required patience. It required understanding metal and leverage. And it worked beautifully. Farmers used them constantly. When forks became cheap enough to replace, when labor changed, when people stopped repairing things and started replacing them instead, the tine straightener disappeared. Now they sit in dusty antique shops, and young people walk past without a second glance. Here's a question for you. Did your grandfather have one of these tools in his shed? Did your grandmother use a different kind? The comments below are open. I'd love to know what tools your family kept, because every tool tells a story about how people lived. Let me tell you about the corn sheller. This is one that looks mechanical and complicated, but once you understand it, you see it's actually a stroke of genius. Corn kernels don't come off the cob easily. Farmers grew corn for animals, for selling, for storage. They needed to remove the kernels from the cob quickly. Some folks did it by hand, row by row. It took forever. So someone, somewhere in the 1800s, designed a tool where you'd feed an ear of corn into a hopper, turn a hand crank, and the kernels would slide off while the cob would drop out the bottom. No electricity, no power, just friction, geometry, and human muscle. The best versions were cast iron, beautiful in their simplicity. Then came the electric corn sheller, then the combine harvester, then the food industry decided people didn't need to shell their own corn anymore. The hand shellers ended up in barns, forgotten. A dibble is so simple it seems almost insult to call it a tool. It's basically a wooden stick with a handle at one end and a pointed tip at the other. Farmers used them to plant seeds. They'd poke holes in the soil with precise spacing, drop a seed in, and move along. Gardens used them. Market growers used them. It was fast and accurate. A good farmer could plant 100 feet of garden in the time it would take to hand-sprinkle seeds and hope they landed right. But once people bought seed tape and then seed pellets, the dibble became unnecessary. Now gardeners just scatter seeds, or they buy starter plants. The dibble vanished from gardens by the 1970s. There was a tool called a swage used in blacksmithing and metalwork that shaped metal without cutting it. You'd place a piece of hot iron on an anvil, set the swage on top, and strike it with a hammer. The metal would flow into the shape of the swage. Different swages made different shapes. Blacksmiths had dozens of them, each one hand forged for a specific task. They were precision instruments made by craftsmen for craftsmen. Then welding changed everything. Then stamping presses. Modern tools could make shapes faster and cheaper. The swage became a relic of a lost trade. A turnip cutter was exactly what it sounds like, a wooden box with a sharp blade inside and a slot on top. You'd feed a turnip in, push down, and it would slice into rounds or sticks. Turnips were crucial storage crops. They needed to be cut uniformly for cooking or preservation. The turnip cutter was indispensable in any kitchen that processed root crops. But when food became processed elsewhere, when people stopped preserving food at home, when the supermarket handled everything, the turnip cutter became worthless. They're almost impossible to find now. The farrier's pritchel was a small tapering punch used to enlarge or create nail holes in horseshoes. A blacksmith would heat a shoe, use the pritchel to make a hole, and then fit a nail through. It required incredible precision. A hole even slightly off would weaken the whole shoe. Farriers developed a feel for how much pressure to use, how to angle the pritchel, how to know when it had penetrated just far enough. It was part of a whole language of blacksmith work that's almost completely gone now. You can still find pritchels in antique shops, but there are almost no farriers left to use them. These tools represent something that's slipped away from American life almost without us noticing. They were made by hand, used skillfully, repaired when broken, and passed down. They required knowledge that was learned by watching someone who knew how. They assumed a world where things mattered because they were scarce, where wasting was shameful, where every item earned its place in the toolbox through genuine usefulness. The workshops where these tools were made are closed now. The trades that demanded them are mostly gone. The hands that knew how to use them are gone. But holding one of these tools, even now, even dusty and rust-spotted in an antique shop, you can feel the intention behind it. You can sense the problem it solved. You can almost hear the thinking that went into its design. That's what these forgotten tools do. They remind us that people came before us who thought clearly about their work, who solved problems with their hands, who built things that lasted, who didn't have the luxury of throwing something away and buying a replacement. Like this if it took you back, and subscribe for the next forgotten tool. The workshop never really closes.